And I'm live. This was not what I expected to do tonight. I actually didn't know what I was going to do tonight. I was thinking about writing this very script. And then I thought about it, and I was watching a video that Vosh did earlier, and I was like, he's so confident when he live streams. Why can't I be confident when I live stream? And I think the answer, if I'm honest with myself, is because I don't live stream enough. The only way to get better at something is to do it. So, as I'm sure you saw by the title of the video, we're talking about small government and other libertarian fairy tales. That's me being whimsical. So this video is going to be a bit of a frankincense monster of what I'm calling libertarian fairy tales. What? You don't like the frankincense monster? Fine then. Think of it as a patchwork quilt of fables. Either way, the thing that stitches them together isn't string or medical grade nylon. It's really just that they're all things that kind of bug me and piss me off. And they tend to get used a lot by people who call themselves libertarians. So I, for the record, am a libertarian. I'm a libertarian socialist, which means, in my mind, the good kind of libertarian. But, you know, the people who typically call themselves libertarian these days are not people who are maybe on the left-hand side of the spectrum. It's more of a right-wing, the Tea Party and all of that sort of jibber-jabber. So yes, I'm one of those sinister socialist libertarians. Yeah, it's important to note that my libertarianness does not define my every thinky thought. I don't think an ideology should ever do that. I think we should always be open to considering different viewpoints. Fascism really never has anything valuable to say because it really comes down to a whole bunch of things predicated on foolishness. So let's get at her. If you do like this video, please do like and subscribe. And I have a Patreon now. So if you really like the video, maybe consider, checking that out. The greatest nation in the world, as they say, is donation. I am going to probably do this as a live stream and then take it down, edit out all the times, or at least some of the times when I go, because I do that a lot. And if I was the Prime Minister of Canada, people would think I was an idiot. So I'll try and do that. All right, small government. So the thing that bugs me about small government as a phrase, it's a bias on my own end. I'm for small government in certain areas, but saying that you're for small government is kind of, again, it's another empty statement that people use that just as a result bugs the snot out of me. So I'm going to just quickly jump over and we're going to do that thing where we look at a web server or a web page that tells us what exactly small government is. I did a Google search on small government. And look at that. Wikipedia is the first match. Wikipedia, it's not good. I think we're probably okay. I'm not basing a doctoral thesis on this. It's a YouTube video. Isn't it nice that it highlighted it for me and everything? A small government is a principle widely invoked by new right conservatives and libertarians to describe an economic and political system where there is minimal government involvement in certain areas of public policy or the private sector, especially matters considered to be private or personal. I don't have a problem with that definition. To me, what it boils down to is when people are talking about small government, that's generally what they're referring to is not no government, not a weak government, just controlling where government is focused, which I'm all for. I just feel like the areas that we choose to be big or small on are not necessarily the same thing. See, this is why I don't live stream. I'm going to give some examples of what people talk about, and it's not just small government that I'll be referring to. It'll be libertarianism in general, where the hands-off are expected by those people, and where I differ on that. Again, I don't think small government is a bad thing. I think poor government is a bad thing. I think overreaching government is absolutely a bad thing. So let's talk the COVID protections that we've been all dealing with for the last year and a bit. Delicious beer. There is a strong push in certain areas to push back and to fight against the mask law, or mask mandates and other social distancing and safety measures for COVID. This bugs me not just because I'm a smarmy leftist. It bugs me because there is a balance, I think, that is necessary between the greater good and individual liberty, and that is where the stumbling block between right wing and left wing libertarianism exists in my mind. Right wing libertarianism is very focused on individual liberty. So, from a right wing libertarian perspective, it is completely valid. I should be allowed to go out without a mask. I should be allowed to practice my religion during times of COVID, because these are things that are important to me, and I have liberty, and these are even things that are generally considered to be protected by our Constitution. They're not ultimately wrong, but they're wrong, ultimately. And the reason is, it's not so easy when your individual liberty affects other people. It's not so easy to draw that distinction. The classic example is murder. If it is my heartfelt desire to murder somebody, I should have the right to murder them. Probably not. Doing so may, in fact, result in some bad reactions from people when I am murdering them. And we have a government in place that says things like, maybe you shouldn't murder people, and if you do, we'll probably, have something to say about it. This is okay. This is a good example where we make the decision to accept a limitation on our freedom, in this case, the freedom of chopping people into little bits, for the greater good of not everyone walking around being afraid at all times that they're going to get chopped into bits, which would suck. I'm okay with that. Another time where we very recently were comfortable with getting rid of personal freedoms, and in fact, a lot of right-wing libertarians were fine with it, was post 9/11. And I'm old, so I remember post 9/11. I saw the things that happened, and I was part of the world when it was going through that. The Patriot Act, and that certainly, was a sweeping bit of legislation, American, but not unlike other legislations that were put in all over the world. And they were very specifically designed to curb a lot of personal freedoms. And as ever, the freedoms people worried about were the right to bear arms and that sort of stuff. But we were okay with giving up and increasing the surveillance of people, increasing the overreach of government in really dastardly ways. It was fine because realistically, the people who complain about this stuff, the right-wing libertarian types, they're probably, in their minds at least, they're probably not terrorists. They're probably never going to have to worry about this. And they know how to secure their communications so that when they, are talking with a underage girl or whatever, then they're smart enough to cover their tracks. A lot of the COVID restrictions are, in some cases, I think, almost the first time people have, in that, wealthy white guy spectrum, have had to deal with the government really telling you what to do. Not just telling you what to do, like, you have to pay taxes or you have to, whatever, but saying, like, you have to wear a mask, even if you don't find them comfortable. There's a natural fear in libertarian circles, left and right alike, of the overreach of government. So when they say you have to wear a mask, you have to remain a certain amount of distance apart, some people will implicitly imagine at that moment that they're living in 1984. We have seen from the people who are, wandering the streets with their burning tiki torches going, we're just wanting to not wear masks. I swear this isn't racist. It's racist. I get the feeling that people have that there's concern about government overreach. I totally understand all that, but it isn't a thing. The government isn't overreaching. The issue here is that people don't take personal responsibility to not go out coughing on people and gathering in large groups and doing whatever. And the government has a very practical necessity in this particular instance to protect the healthcare system. I don't believe for a minute that this is a disease that we're not going to have people get sick and die from. The reason for lockdowns, the reason for mandatory masking and things like that, and for bars to be closed, is specifically to try to curb the growth of the virus so that our healthcare system can keep up. Because if it fails, we're in a world of trouble. Libertarians don't care about the greater good. They care about their good. Preston Manning wrote a letter about, oh, I'm so upset that the government is impinging on my free right to freely practice my free religion, which I don't even think in Canada we have. You don't actually have freedom of religion in Canada. And I'm reading this and I'm thinking like, dude, you can still go to church. You just can't go, 2,000 deep into church. There's limits. You can still practice. You can still watch a religious live stream. You can still do all the things your faith says to do. You just can't have a massive gathering of people doing it. Grow the fuck up. I wouldn't expect much from good old Preston. COVID protections are exactly about the greater good. They're about looking out for one another, and they're about making sure that this virus doesn't overwhelm our healthcare system. And because we cannot look after these things on our own, the government has to step in. That is not small government. Small government would be a problem here. On the topic of healthcare, I think that's another. I grew up in Alberta during Ralph Klein's days. Ralph Klein was a hardcore conservative. Our current premier, Jason Kenney, was like his little lapdog. There's pictures of Ralph Klein holding Jason Kenney and rubbing his hair and going, "Yes, Jason, soon." That may be hyperbole. I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, Ralph Klein back in the day was quite the character, and that Ralph, he did so many things that were great, like slashing hundreds of millions of dollars from our healthcare system, which conservatives have done like every chance they've had the opportunity for as long as I can remember. And in Alberta, that means almost for forever, because for my entire life plus, we have only had conservatives in power, except for one 4-year window that was the previous election where we had an NDP government, which was fucking awesome. Anyways, there is an idea among libertarians that small government should definitely include getting healthcare privatized, or at least stripping back on as much as you can on the public spend for healthcare and turning it over to private sector workers. Now, their argument is always that government is inefficient and you might as well, allow the people who are doctors and people who understand that field privately to be motivated by profit to do the best job that they can, and we'll wind up with a better system. Canada versus America, there's just no argument. Privatization works, people. Kidding, obviously. My problem with the privatization of healthcare, and one of the reasons why I would never live in the United States, no offense, American viewers, of which there are likely tens of millions of you. I have 44 subscribers on YouTube. 44. America's system should be a national embarrassment. The fact that no one is holding it up and saying, what are we doing here? How is our healthcare so expensive and so inefficient? We're paying out the nose for it and getting so little, and so many people don't have it. Obamacare was a step in the right direction. It got more people to be able to be covered, and I believe more people are covered because of Obamacare. And what was the first thing that the conservative election results brought about? Repeal and replace, which clearly worked well. There was no replacement. There was only a faint effort to try and remove healthcare. But replace it with something way better, way better. They've got it all written down. Just give them a couple days, they'll get it out there. I look at our healthcare system in Canada, and I'm proud of it. It is not perfect. You can tell by my teeth that it is not perfect. I am not covered by employer benefits because I am a contractor. This is my own situation. I'm not looking for sympathy. It was a decision I've made, and I made a long time ago, and I have had to continue because of the realities of my circumstances, and I'm okay with it. There will come a time in the not terribly distant future where I will be able to afford to have the many teeth that are falling out of my head replaced. That will be awesome. It doesn't bother me. Women still think I'm nice. It's just teeth. But bad teeth are serious health problems. You know that your mouth is full of poison at that point, and then you swallow, and somehow the healthcare system doesn't figure out that that's probably not good for your insides. There's actually lots of journal articles that talk about exactly this, that dentistry should be fully available because one of the largest causes of strokes. Dental abscesses are a serious thing, a serious problem. No one takes them for serious because it's just, you get a sore thing, it hurts. I had one a while back. I had a dental abscess. It's one of my many missing teeth. And it sucked. One day, I noticed it was puffy and gross, and I was like, "Ooh, that's gross." And later that day, if I moved my head, I was in agony, and I was like, "Well, this is horse shit." And I went and I took a very unsterilized pin because why wouldn't I? And I just poked the thing, and all the goo came out, and immediately I felt better. And I was like, "Yay, I feel better. I'm going to a dentist." And I paid money that I couldn't afford to have a tooth pulled because that's some serious shit. My ex-wife's second cousin's husband, which sounds like a bullshit story, but this is a guy that I know and care about. He had a dental abscess, didn't take care of it, no big deal. Had a stroke. He's younger than I am. Had a stroke, and seriously debilitating, awful experience. Dental abscesses, terrible. Dentistry should be covered. I got off topic. This is one of the reasons why live streaming is so difficult for me. I ramble. Anyways, I look at our healthcare system and I think it is pretty good. There's room for improvement, but altogether not terrible. I believe very deeply that a society can be judged by how it treats the people who are most in need. How it treats the rich and powerful, I wonder how that's going to go for them. It's always good. But the people who are struggling, the people who, whether it be because of poverty or because of systemic problems or because of, any number of reasons, those people, how they are supported defines a society more clearly than anything else, in my opinion. I saw a interview with someone a while back, and they were asked, I believe they were an anthropologist, and they were asked, at what point would you describe that humans had become civilized? And she thought about it a moment and said, well, I think the first time you see evidence of early man mending broken bones. Because prior to that, if you broke a bone, well, now you are slower and you are less agile and someone has to feed you and clothe you, and they just wouldn't bother. The step where we say, you know what, we can help you, we'll take care of you, we'll let you get better. That bone doesn't knit unless there is a community that cares. And I thought that was an interesting answer because I really do, I see this and always have as being the foundation of who we are. Public health care given to everyone, regardless of circumstances, is important. Conservatives, libertarians particularly, absolutely hate that. They see it as wasteful. They see it as less efficient because obviously a private system just works better. There's no reason to believe this, but it obviously would, because obviously it would. Obviously it would. Questioning that, they'll probably have any number of statistics, and they'll look at America as model and say, look at the great quality healthcare at a place like Johns Hopkins or the place in Seattle where all the people keep dying. Seattle Grace, yeah. There's some amazing hospitals in the States under a private system. Absolutely. But that's not the only part of the picture. If people can be turned away, or if people can be bankrupted because of healthcare costs just to stay alive and be healthy, that's not all right. My children are outside and they're yelling. My ex-wife was talking once upon a time about a friend of hers who they met through one of the mommy net type things where middle class women can be radicalized. They lived in the States and they were pregnant and they were like, oh my God, how when was your last doctor's appointment? How was that? And the woman was like, doctor? Oh no. I won't see the doctor until I'm like 38 weeks along because who can afford this? That's crazy talk. And she was like legitimately serious that she couldn't afford to see a doctor for her growing baby. That's obviously a weird scenario, and it's probably not typical of the American system, but it's probably not all that atypical of the American system. Can you imagine, imagine if you have a child or you're about to have a child and you're like, boy, oh boy, I want the best for you. Just not healthcare because, can't really afford to make sure that you're like going to live through the labor, but should be good to go when we get there. I'm sure it'll be fine. Like to me, that's just messed up. Privatizing healthcare is easy to talk about. Waste is always the rallying cry. Oh my God, there is so much waste in healthcare. The administrative costs, the this, the that. No, that's pretty ridiculous. Especially ridiculous here, where we've had literally decades of, brain fart. We've had literally decades of conservatives in power cutting the budget to healthcare. If there was waste in the beginning, there may very well have been. They've cut it. It's gone now. There hasn't been this massive increase in spending to generate all of this waste. It's literally like, we've been fucked. We're still fucked. There's no extra money. We have so few hospital beds. We in my city, we've gone from when I was a kid, there was like 5 hospitals, I think. Now I guess there's 4, but that's because we opened 2 new ones up recently. So yeah, like it's messy to think that there's extra money to be cut there. I don't buy it. And the argument that for-profit motivation is better, I also don't buy it. I certainly can look at a place like Johns Hopkins and go, they have some of the best doctors in the whole wide world. Totally can't argue that. But is it because they're private, or is it because that institution really forces staff to be researchers and to be on the cutting edge? And they do that, and they certainly financially reward people for being innovators in medical technology, for sure. But Canadians can do that too. We have a public system, and people can still be excellent doctors. We found insulin. Fuck you. That was us. Probably other things too. Like, I don't know. Well, there's insulin. Shut up. I just don't see how... In Alberta, we talk about a 2-tiered system. We talk about having like a public system for everyone, of course, and it'll be just fine. But then there's this other additional system where rich people can get, if you've got the money and the means and you want to get access to better quality care, why shouldn't you be able to? To which the answer is, because that's gross and wrong, and you as a rich person don't deserve to live a longer, healthier life than someone who's poor. Not intrinsically. Maybe the decisions you make will make you live longer, and then that's fine. But just because you're rich? Fuck no. The areas where we need to have a big spend that supports a healthy but expensive industry, sure. I can see how that would be something that you could, on paper, go, oh, we should get rid of that. But you'd be wrong, because we need healthcare. It's important. It separates us from the Americans. Another one of the talking points I love so very, very much is free speech. I grew up in the world. I read Voltaire at some point and proudly stated that I may not agree with what you say, but I would die for your right to say it. Of course, we were all dumb when we were kids, but we grow out of that. Now, I'm sounding perhaps a little inflammatory. Free speech is wonderful. I'm using it right now. And you may be looking at this video and going, you're a fucking idiot, in which case you're using it too. Leave a comment. Free speech is important. And whether it's the American First Amendment, I almost said Second Amendment, that's guns. The American First Amendment or the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, whatever group or our country you live in, if you have free speech, you know it is special. But you also know instinctively that there are limits. There are people who call themselves free speech absolutists. They're lying. Philosophy Tube does a fantastic refutation of this using the phrase "I love you," and maybe I'll include when I do the full final upload of this. Maybe I'll include the link to Philosophy Tube's post on. I think it's the one on anti-fascism or anti-Semitism. Yeah, no, it's what is Antifa. She does an amazing job of expressing that the whole Antifa concept and talking about why Antifa exists and things like free speech and the hiding behind free speech that is so often done. I'm going to use a different example. Now, if you're a free speech absolutist, I want you to look me in the eyes right now here. Look at me here, right there. I want you to say to me, I absolutely believe in the power of free speech. I believe that there should be no ramifications whatsoever from me exercising my right for free speech. I am a good person, and I have the right to free speech, and so does everyone else. Did you say all that? You just touched my penis. Wait a minute. You didn't just touch my penis. I just made what is ultimately a demonstrably false statement, claiming that you had sexually assaulted me. That's terrible of me. If this was a genuine moment between two people, I'd be a piece of shit right now. A lot of people talk about how all speech is important and all speech should be free. A lot of the times, those same people, when a Brett Kavanaugh goes up to be brought in as a Supreme Court justice, and they go, here's a whole bunch of people saying that he was inappropriate with them, whether he was actually dangerous or perhaps he was had sex with them without their consent, or perhaps without their enthusiastic consent, whatever the case. Maybe they were underage, who knows. All of these things. And then what happens is the libertarians who want Brett Kavanaugh to be appointed, they go, bitch, she's probably lying. The Democrats would do that. They would dig up and find someone who makes false rape allegations against a great man like Brett Kavanaugh. We should charge her. We should have her in jail. Why is it that it is not illegal to make false rape accusations? And I don't disagree. I think false rape accusations are absolutely terrible. They're also extremely uncommon. More often than not, what happens is rape allegations that don't have tangible physical proof that our current system requires in order to validate that a rape has taken place, which isn't the same as a rape didn't take place. But if I went to the police and I said that you, libertarian, raped me, is that my free speech? Because it's just words. It's just free speech. I'm just talking here. It's not my fault if there's ramifications from it, right? Alex Jones does not that, but he does all kinds of shit. He'll say Hillary Clinton eats babies, and what's the comeuppance for him? Why is my statement scary? Well, it's because it has power. And it's a power that a lot of people are afraid of right now. It's like a form of swatting, where you call the police on somebody because you want to get even with them. That's a garbage, dickbag, worthless sack of crap thing to do. And people who do that should be kicked hard in the shins a bunch of times. If I actually went to the police and said that someone raped me when I was lying, I would hope that the world would punish me for that. Whether that is a legal punishment, whether it is however it works out. I did a bad and would need to be punished. But it's protected speech according to you. You're a free speech absolutist. I don't think you are. I think you are a free speech absolutist when it comes to the things that you're comfortable with. Kind of like you're okay with getting rid of massive amounts of a public healthcare system because you can afford better. Taxes. You fuckers hate taxes. You hate paying them. You do all kinds of things to avoid paying them. And this is not just libertarians, this is the wealthy in general. They bitch about the fact that the poor don't pay enough taxes because the rich pay so much more, which, depending on your level of mathematical understanding, is certainly true. Poor people do pay less tax than rich people, but not percentage-wise. And certainly the percentage of tax paid by poor people is far more crippling than the tax paid by rich people. Taxes are one of the reasons why you believe in small government, because you want government you don't have to pay for. But what's funny is, like, what do taxes pay for? Right? So public health care. Terrible, terrible. That thing that looks after all the people in the world. Hate that. Oh yeah, and the military. What's the U.S. military budget again? Like $90,000 or no, it's more than, no, it's a fuck ton of money. In fact, let's find out. Let's just find out. I haven't thought of doing this, but let's just punch those numbers in. I didn't push the button. I need to push the button. $934 billion. As you can see, what is the U.S. military budget for 2020? $934 billion. This is from thebalance.com. I'm not familiar with the balance. I would hope that it's a reasonable website. Either way, let's just go with $934 billion. That's a bunch of your taxes, buddy. I would say that's a fuck ton of taxes. And I would also argue that those dollars are bad. Spending that kind of money, I'm all for having a military. It's important to understand. I believe that in our current scenario, in our current world, we have to have a military. America has to have a military because they've basically walked around the earth kicking every hornet's nest they can, and they have to deal with that. If I would believed in small government, obviously I'd be furious about this. Obviously, I would be saying we need to de-escalate. We need to calm the fuck down and start just relaxing. This is out of control. We are spending almost $1,000 billion. Like that's a number that you say when you're a kid. And you're like, oh yeah, well, my dad has $1,000 billion, and yeah, because kids are stupid. We're spending kids are stupid amounts of dollars on the military. Not okay. I get it. There's a need for it. Probably not a $934 billion need for it, but there is a need for it. But that's never a budget that they're like, we should cut the fuck out of that. Because they pretty much are okay with military spending, with military muscle, with military hardware, with military as an industry. I've heard it even justified. People have said that, well, it's a major backbone of the American economy. And that's probably true. And that's probably something that should make you uncomfortable. But it's okay. We're here to help. You have to pay taxes in order for everyone to get benefits. Another example, people who don't have children or people who don't have children living at home anymore. Why should I be expected to pay money to support a public school system that I'm not using. Because you're not the only fucking person in the world, Lawrence. There's a whole bunch of other ones. Some of them have kids, and some of them aren't as well off as you. You don't get to just direct your tax into what you want, because we would be spending a lot more than $934 billion on the military, and we would have no healthcare system. Because you're bulletproof, Lawrence. Right? Religious freedom. Oh, we do have... I'm being a dink. But, yeah, no, it's definitely wrong about the we don't have religious freedom thing. We definitely have religious freedom. We just... Yeah. Maybe I'll edit that whole section out. What the hell was I trying to say? Ah, fuck it. Freedom of religion. You wanna pray? Go ahead and pray. Your freedom of religion does not give you the right to impose it on other people. And I'm just gonna skip on because, yeah, brain going good. This is why I'm learning how to live stream properly. The last thing that I'm going to talk about are protests. We just had a church in Grace Baptist Church, I think it's called, in just outside of Edmonton. And they have been flouting all of the COVID regulations because they're good libertarians. They've been doing God's good work because that's what they do, quote unquote. And they continue to have giant assemblies of humans in rooms full of screaming and dancing and singing and praising the good God. And Alberta Health Services was like, dude, you need to stop. And they were like, freedom of religion, bitch. And the Alberta Health Services were like, no, seriously, you have to stop. And they were like, freedom of religion, bitch, ×2. And this went on a bunch of times until finally Alberta Health Services, with the help of the RCMP, actually locked the building up and put a big fence around it, which was a laughable move because it's not like they built a permanent barricade. They built they rented a fence. And if my teen years taught me anything, you can climb fences. You can tear down fences. You can do all kinds of shit to fences. And that's what they did. They tore the fence down. The space where they are having their church is I think across the road from Indigenous land. And so they decided they would rip this thing down, which of course now we're being told wasn't them. It was probably Antifa. Because, why would they rip the fence down? That was crazy. But someone, maybe it was the globalists, ripped down this fence in a very public, screaming display of Christian fervor. And the comments I saw from people were, well, of course, they want to protest a pipeline. They're allowed. Why can't we protect our right for free religion? Which we absolutely do have. Here's the thing. When they, and by they, I'm pretty sure you mean Indigenous people, they protested for changes to a pipeline route because, in this case, I think we're specifically talking about Coastal GasLink, which was putting a pipeline through Wet'suwet'en territory in BC, and people were protesting and trying to raise awareness to the fact that the appropriate protocols were not followed, and this action was very much unacceptable. If you ever want to talk about that, I will talk about that with you, but probably you want to talk about that with someone who's a little more knowledgeable on the subject. I'm just a guy who knows some stuff because I talk to people who are, on the side of the protesters. So I kind of know what, but yeah, maybe I'll have a day where I'll bring someone on and we can talk about unceded territory, and we can talk about the hereditary chiefs and the Indian Act and things like that actually color the way that media story was played out. Anyways, those protests, what was the right-wing reaction to those protests? I'm trying to think. Was it forgiveness? No. What was it? Was it, it's on the tip of my tongue. Love and acceptance? No. Oh, right. They made bumper stickers saying that they should just drive over the native people. So now that you want to throw a temper tantrum, which is exactly what this was, now all of a sudden you're worried about Indigenous people's right to protest? I don't fucking think you are. I'm pretty sure what you're doing is the same thing you do when you go, oh, the Star of David means that I don't believe in COVID. You're a fucking monster when you do that shit. Just want to put this out there. Fucking monster. In the process of smashing this thing down, I believe the RCMP came, or in some way, they wound up going onto the Indigenous owned land, and the Indigenous people were like, please, you cannot be here right now. And there was a whole bunch of further bullshit, because these are people who are already whipped up into zealous fury, right? And they go into these people's space, and I heard, and I don't know the validity, I heard sort of through the grapevine that they were really rude, and that they damaged some property. And when I say really rude, I mean like they were verbally abusive towards elders, and I believe towards the chief of that reserve. I'm not 100% sure, but either way, shitty thing to do. Protests are actually, and this is going to be hard for libertarians to understand, they're good. They're good. People have rights to protest. Now, this isn't a small government thing. I should probably clarify that. This is, well, I guess it kind of is, but when you say that people should be arrested for protesting, which happens all the time when it's not you guys doing it, that's big government. How do you not see that? Government telling other people what to do, that's okay. Government telling you what to do, that is a complete bullshit thing that deserves to have the entire world burn. Yes.
I'm sorry for interrupting your listening.
No. I'm sure all of the internet is very interested in watching me pull out a cigarette for my teenage child.
18 age.
18 is still teenage.
Okay, but that makes it a legal thing to say online.
Sorry, internet. You know what? I'm gonna kind of leave it there. I think I've made all the points I'm gonna make. This has not been awesome. I'm learning. I'm getting better every day. I did write a closing, so I'm gonna read it. So there you have it. That's my mosaic of libertarian fables. I'd like to thank my patrons for all their support. The challenge with thanking all of my patrons is that I only started the Patreon thing like I think 3 days ago. So I have one single patron, and I just want to take a moment and say, Dave, thank you. I love you. Dave Anderson. I will when I download this, and if I do end up re-uploading it, I will have a credits that right here says, thank you, Dave Anderson. My one patron, fantastic human being who I've known for years and I've played music with, love him to pieces, and it touches my heart that he was the person who signed up to be my patron. So that's awesome. Dave is an all-access patron, so if this had not been a live video, he would have got it a whole day ahead of you, and wouldn't you have felt silly? Anyways, massive thanks to Dave, and thanks to you for watching. It was clumsy. I got derailed. I fed a child cigarettes. But in the end, I think we all grew a little, right? Hopefully you enjoyed. And if you want to experience this again, you can always feel free to like and subscribe. If you really enjoyed it, maybe think about becoming a patron. If you hated it, definitely become a patron. Patronizing me, isn't that what makes you happy? Try and put out new content at least once a week. Mostly lately I have been doing videos as opposed to live streams. I think we can all understand why I've been doing videos as opposed to live streams. But I'm working on it, and it will get more comfortable, and I will get easier to converse with, and my allergies will lessen, so I won't be coughing all the way through. But I am putting out content. I'm trying to do it at least once a week, which is easy right now because it's COVID. What do I have, like a thriving personal life? Probably not. Anyways, thank you for watching, and credit to Dave. Yeah, good closer, Jim. All right.